All right. So let's start from what you will learn from this in next 30 to 40 minutes. There is a lot of content. There's a lot of things we can talk about. And I was really struggling to squeeze the most important pieces, the things that I have tried, the lesson that I have learned, that some of the things that are working well for us, like at ServiceNow or some of the products that I've seen in the market doing well versus not doing well. So what we will dive into is, I think the very first important piece here is that how do you explain some of these new technologies to anyone? And when I say anyone means, let's say, if you have a 5-year-old kid, how you will explain AI to your kid, or your mom, or let's say a CEO, right? If you're a PM, you work in a company, and if let's say an executive member comes to your desk and say, hey, what is AI and what we are doing in our product? So I will give some examples on how to explain these to anyone. Then we'll go look into what are the current state, latest trend, use cases. But then the most important, I think the piece here is what are the opportunities for product manager in this space, particularly the AI and blockchain. During this discussion, we might go to touch base on some of the other adjacent technologies, but I'll try to stay focused on these two for the purpose of this session. And then I'll talk about the skills, how you can do a skill gap analysis. I have my own framework. It's really simple, and how you can use it to really thrive into this space if you are interested into building product for AI or blockchain. All right. So I'll not bore you with with this slide, but if I summarize my last 10 years of experience in 2 sentences, so I have these 2 life. One is my day life is building tech products and building product around intelligent automation, and this is where we use analytics, machine learning, AI, and more recently we are incorporating blockchain as well. And the second part of my life is I'm a fitness and a nutrition coach. I'm the best in teaching the calisthenic type of workout. So in the left-hand side, you see Agile Fitness. This is my own non-profit organization. And I teach a lot of one-on-one classes, group classes, bigger conferences on how to stay well, and more particularly targeted about, let's say, if people like us who work in tech world, who have a lot of sedentary sitting lifestyle, how we can stay fit and flat stomach throughout the year. So if any of you are interested, go and Google Agile Fitness or Coach Manjeet, and you'll find a ton of content like videos and things like that. All right, so let me start at a very high level. So what we will do here is the way that I organize this deck is we'll start at a very 360-degree view, 30,000 feet. Then we'll come down somewhere in the middle, and we will all do a deep dive up to the technologies and some of the models that gets used in the blockchain and AI space. And then in the end, we will look into some of the framework and kind of lesson learned. So these questions I see quite a lot these days on the internet, that where do you stand on tech singularity? And if you're hearing this word tech singularity first time, so what it simply means is that what if going forward, if machines, which is mostly computers, if they can get smarter than the human, what it means. And if you see there, I have a lot of pictures here, what Mr. Bill Gates is saying, what Elon Musk is saying, what Mark Zuckerberg is saying. So net, the thing is, the whole society is divided into 2 or 3 parts. Some people think that AI is going to disrupt and take all our jobs, and other side people say, hey, don't worry, we will it's just an augmentation. It will help us and will make us more productive so that we can work on more creative work. So I want to start with this thought. It's interesting to look into how some of these technologies are evolving at a very fast pace. And when we look at what are some of the most the common and the recent technologies. So this is a very crowded slide, and it says the 30 technologies for the next decade. And the slide may not be the very visible to read, but you can Google it. It has AI, blockchain, IoT, and more kind of granular like chatbots, mobile, cloud computing. But the key takeaway here is what it means to us as a PM when all these technologies, as they are getting better and better, and when they start to converge. And this is where I have a very strong belief, and I'm seeing it, in last 2-3 years, the number of PM jobs, the number of product managers that companies are hiring, even starting from a startup companies to mid-size or a big company, it's growing quite a lot. And primarily the reason is because when you have to build product, at the intersection of these technologies, it is a very, the problem becomes much more complex. So you need people like product manager who can think about the users, who can think about the market, who can think about the product, and all the different angles, and working kind of as a champion of the problem that you're trying to solve, and build a product that gets used and gets delight people. So just as a thought experiment, if I ask you that, hey, today, let's say the average longevity is 80 years. And if I tell you, hey, after 5 years, what if we all start to live 150 years, right? So now as a PM, some of the question that pops up into my mind is, okay, if I live 150 years, what will be my retirement age? I don't want to retire at 60 or 65, right? Okay. And what it means to how long should I be working, and what will be all the the grandkids and kids. So the point I'm trying to make in here is that as these technologies converge, as I'm showing in this picture, that as the machine and human try to close that gap and try to offload some of the work that people are doing, the problem and the situations are becoming complex. And that is a good opportunity for us. If you want to become a PM, or if you're already a PM, it's a good news for you. The other thing is, you might say that, hey, I'm not working in this technology, or my products are not tech product. I think it doesn't matter, because sooner or later, you will run into either as a user of these products, or as how you can integrate some of these technologies into your product, right? And so the one example I use here is these technology disruption happen very fast, and so if I give you a quick scenario, let's say you have a water pond, and in that water pond, if you have a lot of lily pads, as I'm showing in this picture. And so the situation is, if lily pad doubles every day, they will fill up the pond in a month, let's say in 30 days, right? So, and let's say if you go to the pond every day, you see maybe in one day there is there's one lily pad there. You go second day, third day, and it doesn't matter. You say, just in the corner, I don't have to worry about. But then the problem starts to happen when, let's say, if you're day 15, right, where you say that, now I see, the pond is quite filled up, and if you don't realize that the lily pad is spreading so fast, and if it's the day 28th and 29th, then you will be kind of caught up by surprise. And we have many examples in the industry. For example, what happened to Kodak, and some of the organizations that were the market leader at one time, but they disappeared very fast in a couple of years, because they failed to realize some of these new the cloud and mobile and new technologies that became mainstream in last decade. The other point I'll mention is that even if you say, okay, I still don't care, I see a lot of benefit, we might get disrupted. But the truth is that if you're working on tech product, your customer or your competitive pressure will will be so high because your customer will be asking, hey, we are using this product. Why can't we do something like the other product is doing, or why can't I use, let's say, the image recognition or voice translations or things like that. Okay. So let's look into that. If you have to explain these technologies to anyone, how you would go about doing that, right? The first scenario I have is how do you explain AI to your kid who is 5-year-old? So this is one way, one example. And the reason I picked up this example because it's easier to use. So you can say, hey, do you know how we train our dog? We show you that if I give you this trick, the dog will roll over, and if I pick it up, dog will jump. So it's very similar to that. Now we have the capability to train our computer. What it means is that we can make our computer think like a real brain, and that's what it's kind of giving the artificial intelligence capability. And now how you do that to a machine is you can show them, words, pictures, numbers, and the computer can detect your pattern, and next time those patterns are matched, the computer can do the same thing for you. So it means that some of the simple task, or another common term, a mundane task that we human are doing, they can easily be done by machines. And if you have to, let's say, if you have to explain AI to your CEO, so this is how I did it. So I put the same example here. So my GM was asking me, hey, what is AI? Can you help? And so the simplest way to explain is that, hey, the computer you're using today, or right, at least the CEO, the way you're using that, historically, you tell the computer that, hey, what to do. You open a file, you send a command, and then. But now the technology has evolved, and we are able to make these machines such that they can take their own decisions and giving them the artificial intelligence capability, right? So in a simple term, that if you can give this some input data, let's call it A, then it can generate a simple output, call it, let's say B. And the photo I have is, in this picture, you have a cat, a dog, and a duck. And if you teach computer that, hey, this is how a dog looks like, this is how a cat looks like, it can start to recognize these basically these different images. Okay. Now, how do you explain blockchain? The easiest one is I found this image, which is kind of your Lego pieces, and you kind of put them together. And the other way to think about blockchain is that think you have $1, and if you give this dollar to everyone on this call, and because when you tell, hey, I give $1 to Manjeet, so all of us know it, and even if, let's say, 1 week later some of us forget, you don't have to worry because there are other people who know about it. So what it means is that the information that is stored, it is stored in such a way that there is a link to that where the information is stored, right? So this is kind of the picture in here. Think of this as a block of data. This is a block of data, and then this block has the information about the previous block, and so which means that even if this block information is missed, you would be able to identify what was the content. In a very simple term, let's say if you have to explain blockchain in just one sentence, you can say, hey, it is like a database. So in a database, what you have this concept of linked list. So in here, it is a encrypted linked list. So this is one way to think about it. And I'll go into some more details. We are looking at a very high level right now. I'll skip this slide, but this is where, when you have time, look into, read it offline. This is a funny and easy to understand explanation of some of these other buzzwords that you hear. For example, you hear, hey, what does digitization means, or what does IoT mean? So take a look when you get it. So the next section, I'll dive into what are the current state, trend, and use cases in this space. Okay, so first we will look into the AI and then the blockchain side of use cases. Most of my slide has a lot of words and content, and I will only focus on some of the important ones. But then the thing is, the industry is changing so fast. If you look into the total investment that went in last year in just in AI space is $27 million, which is like unheard of any investment made in any other technologies. How the autonomous the Google Waymo division, they drove more than 1 million mile, right? Same is with adoption of smart speaker. So if you see here, these are like different technologies powered by some form of the AI platform or technologies. And the net what's happening is everybody, if you look at all these companies, Facebook, Apple, all these five companies, they have started to build their own power chips, which are specifically built to process the large amount of data so that you can run the AI models. And you can see that the other important thing you need for the performance of a good AI is a better network, and we know that 5G is coming to your town pretty soon. And I'll speed up through some of these slides. If you are reading in this space, this should not be new to you. And so this slide is what is the difference between AI, machine learning, and deep learning. So at a very high level, AI is just like giving intelligence to a machine. Machine learning is just a way to bring AI into just one of the way, right? And deep learning is a special purpose where it's used for when you have lots and lots of data. And the data is not labeled. That's when you can use. Again, these are the different techniques to do the bring intelligence into the machines. If we go a step further and look into what are the different type of machine learning and deep learning models and algorithms. So machine learning, as you know, we have supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning. Supervised learning is just like the example I had earlier, training your dog or training your kid, right? If you have a small kid, you're telling them that, hey, this thing is called, this is a dog, this is a wall, this is roof, and next time they start recalling that. Deep learning, there are two common model. There is a CNN model and there is a RNN model. I have another slide if you want to learn more about it. But the one thing to keep in mind is when we look into the real world use cases and where the 99% of the economic value is created today, it is only through this part, supervised learning. There are some use cases, and but the problem there is to do those type of things, the ROI or the cost or the hardware requirement, and then the other resources and the talent you need, it is not possible for a small or mid-sized company to do it. But the good thing is all these big companies, they are working on a plan to commoditize some of those capabilities so that then they can maybe release it as a API or a software as a service, so that you would be able to use if you work for a small company. This screenshot is from a guy named Andrew Ng, who is a pioneer in this space. And the reason I like this slide is in this one table, he tried to put down some of the good examples. And these examples, I was saying, most of them are the use cases are using the supervised learning. So if, for example, we have the picture detection technology, so we can identify if it's a human or it's an animal. Loan application, when you have the loan, you can process. And these are the language, self-driving car, as we were talking about earlier. I'll skip to this slide. This is, let's say, if you are further interested in, and if if you are a tech person, hey, I know this basic regression techniques and what are some of the advanced model that get used. So starts from the basic, the regression Bayes theorem. What are some of the use cases, all the way up to your neural network type of use cases. If you look at the unsupervised learning, again, this table provides some of the use cases and some of the algorithm. At my place, I have used all these three in some of the product that we built. Clustering has tons of use cases. Whenever you have the data and whenever you want to create different cohort, and you just basically pass it through the model, and it can give you some interesting different cluster that you can look at what are the common properties there. Reinforcement learning is, so the simplest way to look at this one is if I tell a machine, and every time the machine gives me an output based on an input, I can either reward, I can say, hey, good job, or I can say, no, that this was not right. And which means that there is a feedback learning loop, and machine will get better and better as we human provide them feedbacks. Deep learning, I'll not read there's all the content, but these are the two common methods here. And from the use case standpoint, some of the common use case that you have seen is like the language translation. If you go to Google and if you type any word, you can translate it into any language. And behind the scene, there's no human that is doing that. It's all done by the translation and their neural network model that has been trained over the year. Similarly, the chatbots, any customer service call today to make, or you go into a website, these are some of the real life use cases that are in production and saving lots of cost, time, and bringing the new product innovation to for the companies. This example is from my company. So we build service management product at ServiceNow. We have IT service management, customer service management. And as I was saying, one of my role is to how we bring intelligence into our workflows and our product, which is better than a typical business rule or a script-based approach. So what I'm showing here is in a customer support example. Let's say the customer report an incident. This is one opportunity where we are using AI. So based on the incident text, we can identify and classify the incident that, hey, I'll take the example from the IT help desk. The incident came in and they say, this incident is related to a server or maybe a software or maybe a network. And based on that, it can automatically classify and route the incident to the right person. So this is one opportunity where we are using. The second is based on the type of incident, how the similar incident has resolved in the past, we can recommend and propose the solution. So this is another opportunity. So net, what it means to both the people who are getting the service, or let's say if you're a company you're providing the service, it's a win-win situation for both of you, because as a customer, you're getting a very faster resolution to your issues and you will be a happy customer. And from the company side, some of these things that usually end up taking long time, let's say incident keep reassigned with multiple people, customer is unhappy, and your support team has to spend a lot more time. You need a lot more people. So this is a great example. We released this capability last year and used by lots and lots of customers today. Chatbot is another one that that you may have seen it other places, and we also have in our platform. And we call it a virtual agent, which works along with the real human agent. And so the first interface you do with the chatbot, and then if chatbot cannot find you the answer, it can transfer your conversation to a human agent and can get you the further help as needed. Some more example, I'll skip this slide. Okay, so I think this section will be more interesting to you. The next one, the blockchain, because in AI there's already a ton of content out there. I couldn't find the same level of content on talks or on blockchain area, and this is something that that I am deep diving quite a bit from last 6 months or so, and learned a ton of things here in this space. So the first question is, how do you explain blockchain? So the simplest way to look at this one is, hey, we started on the previous slide that it is a database, right? And if you look at the traditional database, used to be a centralized database where you store things in a table and then kind of everybody accesses it. But this is a network of your database block. And each block contains some information, some data, and the data could be, if it's money data, it could be anything that you store in a database. But so which means that to power this technology, it was built as a protocol. So other way to look at it, the blockchain is a software protocol. For example, SMTP is for email. But one way to differentiate is to really make use of blockchain, several component needs to come together. You need a database storage, then you need the software layer, which will allow you to store the data in a blockchain format. And then you need the internet and connected computers. And once you have that, then what you can do is you can use blockchain as a economies, which is not controlled by anybody, like no intermediary. Like today we have banks for all the money transactions, and we have government for a lot of other transactions. So all this can be done without any intermediary, which means this is a decentralization approach to do the peer-to-peer transactions, and then do it in such a way that you have the high trust, because the data recorded in the blockchain cannot be tampered with, at least until today. So many people have tried. So that's the power it provides. The next thing is quickly look at how the blockchain works. So I have two diagrams here. One is where I'm showing that in your database you have these different blocks. So let's say block 1, block 2, block 3. Each of these block contains some information. It has a hash, which is SHA-256 is the most commonly used, and then each hash is interlinked with the previous one. So which means that if this one gets corrupted or tampered, this guy has the information that what is the content it was stored. So in other words, there is always a consensus between the nodes and the blocks when the transaction happen. And if you look at it as a workflow, it is a 4-step process. So somebody, let's say you are requesting a transaction, whether it's a property transaction or a coin transaction or anything, doesn't matter. The transaction gets sent to all the nodes, participating node in the network, and then those nodes will validate that, hey, are you the real user based on your identity and based on the information that all the other nodes has. And once that identity is confirmed, then your transaction is complete, and that's when the change is allowed. Otherwise, you cannot make the change. Okay. Another common question that I get is because Bitcoin was the first that we started hearing 6-7 years ago. And so what is the difference between Bitcoin, blockchain, and a Bitcoin? So, and this, I have 3 points here. So blockchain is not Bitcoin, but it is a technology behind Bitcoin, okay? What it means, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a digital token. So think of it as just a number. But the blockchain is the main platform, the database which tracks who owns those digital token. And when we look into the cryptocurrency space, where Bitcoin is one example, Ethereum, and there are many more, and they all talk about basically this distributed ledger. And this is where blockchain is coming and providing, making that possible, because you can have the token, and then you can keep the track who has those tokens and who has those coins. And so if you have to summarize, you can say you can't have a Bitcoin without blockchain, but you can have blockchain without Bitcoin, because one is a platform, the second one is the application of or the use case of the blockchain. Another important thing to know is there are 3 different versions of blockchains. The first one started with the cryptocurrencies. The second one, evolution, was the smart contract. And in the next slide, I'm explaining what smart contract is. And the most recent one is people trying to build application using by leveraging smart contract into all the regular apps that you use. There are 3 different ways that how blockchain can be deployed. First is public, which means that everyone can see the main ledger. The private, which means that only you deploy it in your own company, and if there's people outside, and outside nodes cannot participate in this one. And the third one is a consortium, which is a hybrid approach, where you can say, hey, maybe these 4 or 5 companies, we will work together and we'll have this one blockchain platform database, and you as an admin will be allowed to make changes and things like that. So it's kind of a hybrid approach, but again, in a more it's a combination of centralized and decentralized. So it is a centralized in some action, but then it's decentralized in the other. Looking at the smart contract, and the reason I'm going over some of these terms is because as a PM, or when, at least I'll tell you my experience, when I started looking into there are so many new terms, and then there's so many new things, and I'm like, hey, how can I understand these things into a more basic level? And this is what I try to do in these slides, is not going into the too much of the technical, but do I have a firm kind of a steel foundation understanding of the basics? And that is very important in a PM role, because if you know the basics, then you can go into any meeting or anything and then can talk sensibly and ask the right questions. You don't have to be a real expert in these one. You don't have to be, hey, I need to be a data scientist no, as long as you know what are the basics, how things work, and you can ask the right questions, then, and that will enable you to become kind of a champion of all your different personas, like who is my customer, what technology we are using, what we are building it for, what are the kind of the challenges, so on and so forth. Okay, so coming back here, smart contract is, if any of you worked in database space, like in SQL, we have this concept of stored procedure. So what you do is you write out your bunch of queries, and then you kind of store it for reuse. So it is the same thing in the blockchain. So what you do is you have you build a logic, and then that logic reside into your blockchain. Okay, so still confusing? Let me explain what it means. So if you look into the traditional contract, this is how the traditional contract was. On the one side you have people, then they are writing a contract, something in written, and then that contract is validated by third party, and that's how kind of the execution happens. But in a smart contract, you don't have a third party. Basically third party is going away, which means every information is in the contract. So one way to look at this one is it's like basically your rule defined in a piece of code. It's think of it as a what if condition. So I say, if 2 people go to a machine, let's say a soda machine that you can put a coin, and if the example I here is, if Bob puts $1, he only gets a can of soda. But if Alice puts basically the same amount of $1, C will get a can of soda and 75 cents. So what it means is that this piece of information is embedded as a smart contract, as in the blockchain, that can independently run without a need of third party. So which means that this is an important concept, and it has so many different applications outside of the cryptocurrency space, because in the cryptocurrency it was mainly tracking of the coin, but in here you can write any rule as a smart contract. The other two common terms you will hear is a token and a wallet. And I want to make sure that you guys understand, at a very basic level, is to do the transaction, you need to authenticate yourself. So the question comes, how do you authenticate? And the most common implementation is using a wallet. So which is, it's like, you create an account and it gives you your unique key, private key and public key. So private key, you keep it with you. And any transactions where you are sending money or you are doing any other smart contract, it happens, the information's that's stored in your wallet. So it certifies that you are the owner of that transaction or whatever the coin that you own. So, and token is more in the context of cryptocurrencies, like we talked about Bitcoin. So think of these are the virtual assets. But then there are many different type of token that came into the picture. Some is released by government now. There are some security token, and there are ICOs. You can look in. There was a big trend last year about ICOs, which is a way to raise money. So if you're starting out a company, you can say, hey, this is my virtual assets, and if you buy this token, you will have the certain think of like a stock, right? That you, before going IPO, you own that piece of stock, and this is how you can invest in pre-IPO companies. These are the common platform in the blockchain space. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these companies have came up with their own implementation. And at a base level, they are the same, but then the implementation, the way the authentication happened, the way all the governance is done, so that's different. So you can read through it. So to me, this is one of the vision slide that I have. How do I see in next, let's say, 5 years or so, both the blockchain and the AI technologies coming together, and we are building product such that they are intelligent, and then they are secure, and then you don't have to put so much of money, and in the sense that if you can remove the intermediary like banks and all these guys, then you can really simplify this peer-to-peer transactions. But that brings up a lot of other questions. Hey, what happens to the different currencies that these countries have? Like, what happens to our Indian rupees or a US dollar? And government don't want these. And what if somebody breaks the your blockchain? And then and to me, all these are the valid concern. But as a PM, one thing you need to go and continue to deep dive into that, search for the truth. And the way to search for the truth is looking into, or actually let me hold on to that thought, because I have a slide coming up there in more detail, that how you can look for the real world use cases in these technologies, how you can break down some of the myths that you may hear, that hey, the first slide that I had started from the singularity concept, and my take is, as you start to build product in this space, you will find that it is extremely hard. It is we are still learning. We are doing and we are learning, which means that our approach has to be very agile, and it has to be very repetitive. So the best way to do it is look at hey, what is the trend? What are the real world use cases? So these are the 5 use cases of blockchain that are already Bitcoin. People are buying Bitcoin these days. When you get your education degree, many companies in the US or university in the US, they have adopted blockchain because now they can certify that you as a student, if you graduated, that the diploma or the degree you're getting, that it is the real and it is not tampered with. So I think it's a fantastic use case, as we know the plagiarism and all that is happening. Blockchain is humanitarian. Some of the NGO organizations, so they are bringing transparency by using blockchain. And okay, we raised this much of money, and how much is just how it was distributed, who received it, and all that. Okay, so let's look into what are the if I recap, we looked at the AI, we looked at the blockchain. What are some of the trends in there, and now, particularly for the blockchain, it is even at a nascent stage compared to AI, because in at least AI, you have a lot more use cases, chat bots, and some of these into production. And so, if blockchain is a new innovation, which means that all the infrastructure needs to be built. It means that the complexities are more, and as a PM, I see it as a big opportunity. In the blockchain space, there are some problems that are worth solving. Is like identities is the way it is done is you create your wallet, and then if you, let's say, you lost your wallet, everything is gone. So that's I think one problem worth solving is how you can really simplify, because even if to set up a wallet, it's not easy today. Same is with scalability, how you can scale across these. If you have a public blockchain deployment, what about the governance? So these are the point I would challenge you to think about and see how you can look into these different different areas, and make an impact as a PM. Right? That there are many different ways that I brainstorm on this topic is look into how the similar problem is solved in the past, and do a tear down of some of the products that are already built and see what are the pain points and how you can resolve them. Again, everything any new technologies comes with a lot of limitations, so I have a few of them here. Blockchain is generally slow, and it's costly, and and in most cases, it's you have to waste a lot of resources. I'll skip this slide. You can read it. This is a summary of some of the myth that blockchain is not your kind of a silver bullet. It has limited application, but then you can, if you are a creative PM, you always start with those questions that, hey, what is my problem space, and then is my problem getting solved if I use any of these new technologies? Not that I have the technology and now what problem I can enforce into this one. That approach is unlikely to work. You can look at this slide. Is this somebody did a hard work of putting together the 50 most common real world use cases into one infographic. I think, and these are really, really good examples. So you can read about it. If you ask me that what is my take on the future of blockchain in next 5 to 10 years, so I think we are kind of at this stage plus half of this stage where we are building out these, making enhancement in the platform and how the wallet is set up, bringing some standardization. We have this crypto Bitcoin type of use cases. But then as I see the more is that we are going into an era where more and more applications that use a centralized database, where it will make more sense to use this decentralized blockchain-based approach. So a few examples here, can go through later on. All right, who will win some of these things? There's so many companies are trying, so this slide is worth looking at. Some of them, how much they have invested. And there is a Medium blog link. You can click on that and read about this interesting read, because it tells you that there's so much movement happening in this space. These big companies are acquiring smaller companies and and at the same time they don't want to collaborate with each other. It's a very interesting things to read about. How we are doing on time. Okay, so I will take 5 more minutes and then maybe we can open up for Q&A. So the useful framework. So the one common useful framework where you can look at as a product manager, that what a product manager do and what are their responsibility. And if you Google that term, you'll find maybe I would say 100,000 responses and how people have defined. This is one way to look at that. If they on one side, if you have these technologies, on the other side you have people that you want to serve with your product and services, and as a PM you will have used these different skills. I call it senses. So you have your product sense, analytical sense, execution sense, leadership sense, and I think each individual is naturally good at in one sense and may not be very good at others. So this is where you go into your skill gap analysis. I also throw in the health sense here. And the reason being is I see a lot of my fellow product manager who are really, really good at let's say product sense or execution sense. But if you look at their health, their personal health, it's not a good situation. And I'll tell them that, hey, it doesn't matter if you are not taking care of if you're not building up your health sense, which is how to be well and how to be healthy, then you will not be able to play a long-term game in the sense that you will not be able to build good product for many, many years, because sooner or later you will so I don't want to go into my fitness side of things, but I want to remind all of us that we need to learn that while sometimes we get too busy and building products and things, but then 5 year goes by, 10 year goes by, and then you go for a doctor checkup and then you hear the big news, and to me the sad part is then sometimes you realize that some of the damage that has happened is irreversible. So you can be little proactive here as a sense. Let me speed up a little bit. So there's a 4-step process to build. This is my simplified version. So you always start from what problem you are solving, who is your customer, and then you try to match your problem with the potential solution and find out the winning solution, become a champion of that. And as you build product, you build the stories, and you make sure your product is well adopted. Again, I'm showing an AI example here. How you can look at your business domain, which is your problem space. This is your solution space, as side by side. So it's always interesting to see when you are looking at your use cases to put this side by side and see what fits where. This I cannot stress enough. If you guys haven't looked at some of these common framework, I would say couple of years ago, I became a student of this framework, and my kind of life had changed as a PM, because now whenever I see a problem, I see in which framework I can fit in, because that gives me a structured thinking and makes me more efficient. And I will sit down for you the framework that you can take a look, whether it's like, hey, what our success look like, so you can think about what KPIs you'll be measuring, how you can build a product that your customer can get hooked to. So there's a HEART framework. So take a look at this one. How we are doing on time here? I just want to make sure that leave enough time for Q&A.
Could we open for Q&A now?
Yeah, let's do that, because some of these are just the questions that you can read it by yourself whenever if you're
Sure.
Start working in this space. Yeah, let's see what questions we have.
So thank you, Manjeet. Thank you so much. So I'm just gonna, can you see the Q&A window?
I just open it up, yeah. Okay, so I'll go from top to bottom, just because there's only 4 questions right now. So Hemant,
I received some questions from through mails also. I'll read that out once you're done with this.
Okay. So the first question from Hemant is asking, does every problem product needs to worry about AI blockchain? What are key considerations to be taken into account for? Yeah, so these are the two, 3 slides that are coming up. So in a summary, in the beginning, no, not every product needs to worry about AI and blockchain. It depends on what the product in where and what stage it is. If the product has the future that you want to move that product into, let's say if the product is not in the cloud, or if the product is running a standalone, then you don't have to worry about. But if your company or whatever the solution that you have, if you want to digitize your product and services, that's when I think you need to start thinking about these technologies, because that's when they will bring these interesting use cases and provide you more power, because both technologies are highly dependent on the connectivity and the internet and the data. Yeah, so for that you need to have your product and services on the cloud to do more of kind of real-time analysis. Next question from Pawan: will the role of product manager be taken over by machine? No, absolutely not. And the reason I'm so confident is because I see product manager role as a highly creative role. And AI is, we talk about this general AI and all that, but we are too far away from that. And even if it, let's say, happen 50 years from now, there will be, there's so many skills that an AI cannot do, because when you think about empathy, when we think about what user is thinking and all the soft skills and all that, those AI I don't think will be able to do it really well as human. So yeah, that's my take on this one. Susil, any application where blockchain is deployed using DevOps principle? We are exploring that, so I'm not aware of any application, but I'll tell you what we are doing is for some of the IoT use case. So I'll keep it a high level, because then I don't want to share too much about, but think of that. If your IoT data is coming into your cloud, right? And now you have this DevOps life cycle where you're continuously releasing and all here. So one way is that if you want to, let's say, track all the assets that you have in a company, like these days you have software assets, hardware assets, and who has what assets, so that you can really track, because that's the one big problem, because companies over the year have so many assets and the ownership transferred from one person to another, and if somebody forget to update the record, and so this is where kind of in a kind of a DevOps concept, it's a when the transaction and change happen, how this asset management example I'm giving, it can get applied, so that there is always guarantee that your asset information is up to date in terms of the ownership, in terms of their state, in terms of their vendors, and all the related information. Okay, Pawan Govinda is asking, should a product manager learn these technologies first and then try to fit them into real world problem, or look for problem C and A? So yeah, so I would say the later part. So you look for the problem. So first is understand at a very high level. So I'll say the parts that I covered in the first, the 10 slides, that is the first beginning, because if you don't understand the basics means that what it can do, without worrying about how it is doing, without worrying about, hey, are we using the clustering model, similarity model, or that I just think that, hey, I know that we have some model, whether it's and my data science team, or we can get it from Google or Facebook, but then how can I kind of use it? Do I have the data? Because what you need for AI is you need the very first thing is okay, what problem will it solve? Can it be solved without AI? If something can be, in most cases, at least in the in our service management space, in many cases you don't need AI, because you can just write, if a nicely written workflow and a business rule will do a good enough job for you. AI is good when you have to detect patterns, and when you have the data, and then and you have the resources and some understanding of how to make use of that data, how to ask right questions, and then get insights out of that. Okay, moving on. Pramod is asking, is AI blockchain suitable application for every industry? The high-level answer is yes, for every industry, because if you look at that one slide where I was showing the 50 examples for blockchain, and there is a similar slide for AI as well, and that covers all the industries, whether you talk about the healthcare, whether you talk about the education, or you talk about the industrial or IoT space, because not it generically, but there are good example of real use cases where you are really either simplifying the way the work happens today, making either faster or making it is more efficient, or freeing up the human time so that people can work on more creative things. Verinda Nayar's asking, is it possible for the deep learning neural network to help restore memory in patient will? Yeah, so I remember reading an article recently from Google Brain. So Google Brain is one of their division at Google, where they are working on this space, where whether it's detecting cancer or whether it's Alzheimer or so I would say it's very the hopes are high, but some of the initial POC results or testing results, they are encouraging, which means that that I'm hopeful that in next couple of years, not too far away, we will be able to more proactively detect some of these diseases, and in some cases we will be able to fix. I don't know up to what level. So, for example, this Alzheimer question here. So that's why I think it's interesting. If you are in this space, to subscribe to some of these newsletters, or then and then when you go for the internet search, usually I don't just go and then search basically things random and read random articles. I just go for, if this, for example, this is a fantastic question, and you can go into and spend 30 minutes and then see what is the current state, what are the challenges, and then you sit down in a room or stand in front of the whiteboard and then make your own assessment of, hey, what is my take now? I understand what is in, how would I solve it as a PM? So that helps you train your product sense and makes you become a better PM. All right, Wamsi is asking any domain product category where AI ML technology should not be applied or tried. I would say anywhere where the ROI, for example, in some cases, let's say you can say I have the data from last 10 years, but if to make that data usable, for example, to apply the supervised learning, you need a label data, and to label the data, if it costs, let's say, millions of dollars. So that is the one lens you can look at, that what it would take to, and let me do one thing. I'll quickly go over these two slides, because this covers some of these questions. So I'm switching back in for a second. So first is understanding what the technology is capable of. Right? In some cases, I'm saying it is dumb. In some cases, it can really work, because you may hear the story. Few companies tried, some of these AI model or even the chat bot, and then after a couple of years, they said, hey, it's not working for them, because their business model and their scenario was too complex, and the implementation cost was so high, maintenance was so high, so they decided to, get back. But the way you should look at it is that asking these questions: do you have the data? Is the data clean? Because if it's not clean, then you will be spent most of the time, I would say 90 to 95% of the time in cleaning the data. And then this question is that in most of the cases, a simple model like linear regression can do the trick. You don't really have to think about a more sophisticated model. And then look into you may see that hey, there's so many patents and so many universities are coming out with this news. They have done this, but I see this is a big problem because there's a big gap between what academia is doing and what actual business problem, like as a PM, that we are doing. So if a paper claims that hey, this is the model, this can work, but if you really try that out and deploy it to your scenario, this is where the rubber meets the road, and you find it challenging. Net, this is the one way. If I summarize, think about some of the questions like what is the future of PM and how it. So one is that as a product manager, you should see it as a catalyst in this transformation, which means that as you build product, you see that, hey, that how do you participate in your strategy discussions? How do you participate in how you can stay up to some of the trends? Have the framework so that you can identify the use cases. In this slide deck, I have at least 6 or 7 good frameworks that I have. And the most important is don't try to reinvent the wheel, because this I see the mistake that we also made, where we try to do, hey, we will go and do our found an open source model and we try to do our own implementation, but then we realize that, hey, this is not a simple problem to solve. So, but the good thing is you can see if other people have solved those problems, and see in whether it's open source community or whether this the cloud companies like Google, Amazon, and then if you can just use their APIs to do the job. Okay, so let me address a few more questions. Pramod is asking, to introduce AI blockchain into manufacturing industry, we might face questions from security perspective. So how should we handle it? Yeah, so I think, security is a concern, no matter, I think doesn't matter what industry it is. So the way to look at this one is, it's always look into the context, okay? There is no kind of a generic answer here. It depends. How critical is the security? What are the and the most tricky part in here is there's different regulations from countries like the GDPR, right, in the Europe, and now in California also, the California data protection laws and all that. And to me, as long as you understand that, okay, how you can play by the laws, and is the technology able to serve you by following those laws, then and you can find people have done a lot of research, and there's a lot of write-up and more sessions happening here. So yeah, that's the my take here. Sahil, any tools or tips for creating prototype for blockchain apps? So I would say the easiest one is if you have an iPhone, if you go to App Store and search for the blockchain or mockup. I remember seeing that somebody put an app, easiest way, not just basically first is to understand, but also where you can put this prototype. But then if you that's kind of from learning standpoint. But if you really want to kind of create a proof of concept for your use case, then I would say it's similar to AI. Facebook opened up their blockchain APIs so that you can use, let's say, whatever application or use case you have. Usually they give you 30 days of kind of the the free account. You can try it out and see what kind of results you are getting. And if your question is more around just like a UI UX design, then you can use any design tools like Snake or I most of the time I do it in PowerPoint unless it's too complex, just to show the idea that what the flow looks like, how the data will flow, how the decision will be made, and what challenges we might face during early days of introducing AI. Yeah, the biggest challenge is, I would say, the making this mistake that you have the data and then spending 6 months and then realizing that your data you had is not usable. And then even before that, the mistake that happens is that without fully understanding that what benefit you will get out from applying AI, right? Because if you ask me that, hey, you can say that I have the data and I want to find out which customers are going to churn. You can find out using analytics as well. But so asking those questions. So that's why I had a slide in. So if this is a good, let me show you. So this is takeaways, understanding, questions to ask yourself. So if you go through these question list, that will basically make you more aware and so you can make more informed decisions. All right, so Varinda Nair, will the image recognition function in AI help in detecting a lie? For example, I'm not sure. Lie detection, no, I mean, I would have to read about it. If I have to make a guess, I'll say, that if you can, based on the perception that what kind of face gestures we make when we tell lie versus when we are telling truth. And if you have lots of images and you can kind of, correlate and easily differentiate between the two, yeah, possibility is there, but I don't know the accuracy and, it might be questionable, but, all right, so this was the last question in this list. Do we have more?
Yeah, Manjeet, could we take 2 more questions?
Yeah.
So the first one is, with all of data and tech-based innovation moving to China and the ASEAN countries, how long will it be before all product management will move to these countries where adoption and usage of technology is at a faster rate? This is from Shankar Ganesh.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I agree that the move is happening, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that the amount of work that happens in countries like, and this I'm telling as a truth, like in California, right? So if I'll tell you the situation of my company, we were a US based company like 3 years ago, and then now we have offices in India, and we have a big development center in India. But that doesn't mean that the growth is happening only in I would say in our India office as an example, right? So we are growing. So the growth, because if you look at the whole market, right, the investment, the $27 billion were pumped up by just VC in the startup, right? Similarly, all these big companies, and they are making billions and billions of dollars of investment. And the big challenge there is, I would say, the talent. I would say, irrespective of the geographic location, because the internet connectivity and all those tools, remote working tools, are becoming so good. It doesn't matter where you work, but I think the having this basic understanding and having the skill set, whether no matter what job it's a PM job or a developer job, and so yeah, to me, the bigger trend I see is less of in a location, but more of, I see the companies providing more and more flexibility to people so that they can work remote, and that I see is a big trend. There's so many companies now who are 100% remote, like 200 people company, and everybody's remote. There's no office presence. And if you look at, they're doing, the close to $100 million of business. So that's, to me, is and then you talk about all the employee satisfaction and how we can keep the retention rate. At the same time, if you think about the gig economy or more contract economy like Uber, or where you have the skill and then you want to work on your own term and own flexibility, I see those like ability to work remote and then ability to work on my own term wherever I want, whenever I want to work. To me, these are the one basically is going to more push forward. The rest, I'm less worried about the geographic movement, and because there's some, it's always Sometimes you move jobs out and sometimes you bring jobs in because as the business changes, and I've seen it happening both ways.
Sure. Thank you. The last question is from Vasuki Ranga. Is the industry mature enough to handle blockchain? I mean, to be a successful PM in this space, the strategists, the executives, etc., in the organization need a good grasp on the technology.
Yeah, so I would say it's still it's not mature. It's not mature because even if so the only I would say there's some maturity level that has happened is in the cryptocurrency space, and the reason we have there is because all this investment went in all these companies like the company that have the Ethereum, and then we have these the cryptocurrency stock exchange like Coinbase, and so those are the one which we have millions of people now using, buying and things. But I would say that was a more limited and one use case. If you really think about using blockchain in many other like this, particularly this smart contract version in all your apps. So think of, let's say, in all your phone. Go through this exercise. How many of those apps you think, if if the data is stored, if it is powered by blockchain, what will improve? So it's in these laws. Yeah, it's slow. It costs more. So, but the good thing is hardware is getting faster and cheaper. So the cost concern is becoming basically from big to smaller and smaller. The technology, the knowledge, like the session like this, because all this community knowledge that we have, we are learning from each other, and I think this is a perfect example. And as we are brainstorming, and I think everybody's in this mode of doing and then learning and evolving. So I think as long as you have this, the design sprint and agile and DevOps type of concept where you try out few things, you start with the right problem, right questions, and then see if things are working. If not working, you change your directions. I think to me that is the best approach. Instead of just looking at it black and white, that always look for opportunity. Always have that the question in the mind that, hey, this might not work, and have the the user empathy at the forefront. It's not that if I'm just this solution and I put blockchain because customer doesn't care. If they have to let's say sign a loan application, they don't care if it is being powered by blockchain or the traditional contract. What they care is the trust and the security. And okay, so I think we are out of time now.